The Intersim Sling Operation Simulator will soon be testable in Montreal for North America, and the system can be sold directly from there to interested companies. Operators from USA or Canada who need to quickly train pilots in the basic of long-line vertical reference techniques will be able to do so by saving a few flight hours, and the safety gain will be obvious. Also much more because we can do many other things like ground handling and hovering, auto-rotation, IMC entry training. Learning vertical reference in a helicopter. For vertical reference flight, the pilot must now get these cues in the vertical plane, as the name suggests. This involves physically leaning to one side to look underneath and sometimes behind the helicopter. Until a few years ago, this was a world that was impossible to meaningfully experience using a flight simulator. The tool that will change everything is virtual reality. Most of the time when flying a helicopter, real or simulated, you never have to stick your head and shoulders out the door in flight, so that's the case now with VR as in real. In vertical reference looking down, things can get out of control quite quickly, and you will need to raise your head to a normal position to stabilize the aircraft. Practicing an OGE hover, looking down will do several things. Firstly, it will help your brain learn the basics of detecting drift while looking vertically down, and secondly, it will allow you to see if it is going to cause you motion sickness, which is a very real possibility when you do this in VR. However, our 4-axis motion platform remedies this problem. This type of flight is extremely difficult and is not suitable for everyone, so the simulator allows pilots, already experienced, to be selected on their lifting skills. It will still have to adapt to VR, but in general they get there. Your hover may be solid and well controlled, and yet the load often suddenly decides to do what it wants and begins to sway as if afraid of being directly under a working helicopter. At Intersim, we worked with the feedback of experienced pilots, and we arrived at something valid in terms of realism, the biggest problem being the sway of the load, which we corrected, but we were also able to act on the helicopter model and its responsiveness. All this means that we are no longer in a game, but in a real professional simulation, and we are also using one of the best headsets on the market. It remains to be refined to avoid at all costs negative training which would cause the pilot to adopt bad habits on the simulation. It is obvious that this simulator does not exempt from the presence of an experienced certified flight instructor who will be able to deliver his knowledge here in a calm environment suitable to transmission. The helicopter that we have adapted here is the Cabri G2 with 20 m of line and 180 kilograms of big bag load, a helicopter which is perfectly suited to the school of sling work. One of the keys to avoiding load oscillations is to fly very smoothly and avoid abrupt inputs. A lot of riders think they're smooth, and maybe they are, but maybe they're not. One of the most dangerous aspects of a swinging load is that it is often made worse by attempts by a beginner or overconfident pilot to correct it. When a load begins to oscillate, a terrible cycle can begin. When the load reaches the peak of its swing, the weight of the load will pull the device in the same direction as the load. Fly the helicopter, not the load. This is much easier said than done. An oscillating charge may appear to have a life of its own, but in reality it is just an inanimate object bound by the laws of physics. It is therefore up to the pilot to move the helicopter so as to cancel the acceleration and bring it back under the helicopter. Long line training in the real world can be expensive, especially if you don't get the hang of it right away, so the value of a realistic, high-performance simulator may have its place especially in today's fast-paced times. You see in this video my progress in piloting, recorded during a session, to achieve almost zero sway by bringing the load in front of a building, just before its removal. You can also observe the movement of the controls at the same time, the latency in the simulation being very low. Thank you for your interest in Intersim. www.interzyme.fr